Welcome, everyone, to episode 14 of Talk Exchange. It's our episode on networking, and we have with us one of the best networkers you will ever come across. It is Greg Peters. Not only is he a professional networker, he's also an author, a consultant, and a speaker. And lucky for us, he gives us some really great tips on how to be a better networker and how to better connect with people. Some quick examples are knowing what you need when you walk into an event. Have a goal in mind. How it's important to take the lead in a conversation, but always be the one listening. And just the overall power of networking and how it can help you in so many different aspects of your life. So we hope you enjoy episode 14 of Talk Exchange. And by the way, we will have information in this episode's description for some of the books that Greg's written in his bio. So enjoy. And here we go.
Welcome to this episode of Talk Exchange. I'm Tracy Edwards, the National Exchange Club CEO. Hi, Christy.
Hi, Tracy. How are you today?
Great. And Christy is the Communications Director at the National Exchange Club. So, Christy, question for you as we kick off today's episode. Are you a self-described introvert or extrovert?
You know, I'm very good in both types of situations.
Wow.
Yeah, but I will tell you
Good
that,
for you.
after being at an event, a big event like the convention, I really want to go back into my own personal bubble.
Yeah.
You know,
that feels
tiring.
good. Well, it's interesting because I've done a lot of research. I would say since the pandemic, I got really interested in introverts and extroverts because I thought it was about what you decide to do. And now I have great respect for where people identify naturally. And I found it fascinating that today's guest, given what he does, identifies as an introvert, and hence he's known as the reluctant networker. So we're excited today to have with us Greg Peters, the reluctant networker, who's a national and international keynote speaker, author, consultant on all things speaking. And I'm curious about that, though, because networking. So we got together today to get Greg on to talk about networking. So in his bio, he wrote that he's actually an introvert and he's worked hard to master these skills. And I think that's super cool. So welcome, Greg. We're excited to have you with us today.
Well, thank you so much for bringing me in. It's a delight to visit.
Well, talk about how an introvert gets into the business you're in, where you're around people, you talk to people, you teach people, and you're among these massive crowds.
Yeah, well, I did. I started out actually as a computer programmer with all the social skills that implies. But introversion and extroversion are basically just where you get your energy from. Extroverts love to be in a crowd because they just get energy, so much energy from that. You see them that they're at the events and afterwards they're practically dancing in place. Whereas we introverts were like, okay, I'm gonna go stand in the corner now for a few seconds and just be quiet, you know. So what I had to do though was learn how to be outgoing. Being outgoing is a skill. Introversion is just where I get my energy from. And just like you were saying, Christy, after an event, I need my quiet time. I need to be able to go and sit and just kind of process all those things that I've been exposed to.
Yes.
So what got you interested in networking? Was it to build your business or just?
Yeah, actually, I was working at University of Michigan as a computer programmer, and I had this genius idea of going out and starting my own web development business. This is back when anybody could start doing that. And what they don't tell you is that when you start your own business, you have to find your own work. And I quickly discovered that aggressively waiting by the phone wasn't actually doing me any good. I wasn't getting a lot of results out of that. So I figured I could either cold call, which seemed a lot like banging my hand repeatedly with a hammer, or I could try this networking thing. Well, as I mentioned, I had no social skills whatsoever. And the first attempts at networking were just painful and horrible. I mean, it was kind of like going to your first junior high school dance and seeing all the cool kids out there having a good time. And you're just kind of standing in the corner waiting for networking to happen to you. Uh, Fortunately, my mom, Debbie Peters, is a genius when it comes to networking, and she
Yes.
kind of took me under her wing and helped me to learn how to do this better. And it took a while. It took a while for me to get better at it. But the nice thing is, these are just skills.
Mhm.
Anybody can learn them. I mean, and one of the benefits I had as a computer programmer is I'm a systems oriented person. So I came up with systems for all of them. I came up
Oh,
with systems of how to approach a group. I came up with systems how to have a conversation. I have systems on how to follow up. The whole idea is the more you can break it down into here's a step by step process, the
yes.
more it just becomes an easy thing to do.
Mhm.
Do you find you're more comfortable outside of, that quiet zone, Greg, now that you have a process? It's not so
I,
much up to you, but the process.
Mhm.
yeah, well, I know that like when I went to my first Chamber of Commerce lunch, or actually it was a breakfast. I walked in, grabbed my food, sat in the corner table, and just tried not to talk to anybody. Um, and it can feel awkward still when you walk in. You see all those groups of people that are already talking with each other, and but now that I know I've got these procedures, I can fall back on. I can, one of the things I tell people is look for the smallest group, and the smallest group is one. Look around for those other people that are by themselves. It's easy to walk up to one person, and then here's a process for having this conversation. So it becomes so much easier to walk up to people, walk up to complete strangers, and start having a good conversation with them.
Well, that's so relatable when you think about that because you're right. We've all walked into those situations where it seems like everybody has somebody, everybody's in a conversation. And what do? You either walk out or I like that process of looking for the person in the room who maybe is that person who's waiting for somebody to approach them or doesn't know what to do. And then you have that connection. I thought it was interesting too that you were so willing to learn from your mom, which is not the case with a lot of children. Typically, you had, the consummate networker and a connector right there, and you were willing to learn, which is a great quality because to learn anything, you need to be two things: humble and coachable, right?
Mhm.
So you had the benefit of an expert, but you were also humble enough to say, "Hey, I want to build this skill, and I'm willing to learn."
And I took her class and asked me if I got the family discount. No, no, I did not.
And you had to help clean up afterward, I
Right.
bet.
Yeah, I was expecting to show up early, and then
Yes, be the example, Greg.
oh, I definitely was.
So when you approach someone, Greg, if you're in a situation where you're not 100% comfortable, what is the first thing you bring up? Is it small talk? Do you talk about the weather? Do you talk about something they're wearing? How do you approach that conversation?
I tell people don't worry too much about what you're going to say. Worry about what you're going to ask.
Right.
Okay.
So, I mean, especially if it's in a professional setting, there's nothing wrong with asking them, what they do.
Mhm.
I be careful about asking what they do for a living, because sometimes people are in transition, and so you might be putting them in an
True.
uncomfortable position. But you might ask, what industry are you in?
Okay.
You might ask, what brings you here today?
Yes.
Any of those things get people talking. And the interesting thing is, if you are curious, if you're interested, if you're fascinated by the people around you, the conversation almost naturally just comes out.
Mhm.
I love asking people, first of all, what they do. Tell me a little bit more about that. How long have you been doing that? And then the one I especially love, if they've been doing whatever they've been doing for longer than 3 years,
Mhm.
I love asking them what's changed.
Oh,
Oh, good one.
yeah.
Mhm.
Because if they've been doing whatever they're doing for longer than 3 years, and especially the last 3 years,
Hmm.
lots of stuff has changed, and
Yeah.
their chances are they have strong feelings about it. And when people talk passionately, that's when you get to meet the real person. If they're just answering questions like, "Oh, what's your position? Where do you live?" Stuff like that, they don't delve into their emotions. But
Mhm.
when they start you get into areas where they really care.
Yeah.
That's when you meet who they are. And your whole goal, especially at networking events, is to decide whether or not you want to have a longer conversation with people.
Right.
You can't have a deep conversation, no matter how great the networking event is. You can't have a truly deep conversation with someone.
Mhm.
So your whole purpose is, in 5 or 10 minutes, can you find out enough about a person to know whether you've got the chemistry for a good potential relationship?
That's
Mhm.
great advice.
Definitely. So your life changed, Greg, about 5 months ago. You had a
Yes, it
very
did.
scary experience, and I was telling Christy when we were on our way over how thankful I am that you're here today. I know it was a scary situation for you and your
Me too.
family. You look great, you're in great spirits, and, tell us a little bit about what happened and what you learned from that and what changed in your life.
Yeah, so it was October 5th at 10:15 in the morning. If you had been sitting with me in my living room, you'd have seen me draped over the ottoman, face down, with my arms just hanging on the ground. And of course, my cat was sitting on my back because I was a convenient horizontal surface. Um, what I didn't realize, and what the cat didn't realize, was that I was having a stroke. I found out later is called a subarachnoid hemorrhage. Um, I'm very fortunate. It was a rare type of stroke and a very mild type. Um, Still, it was a scary experience. I was rushed to the hospital. My wife was taken to the private room in the back to talk about things like non-resuscitation and
Wow.
power of medical attorney, things like that. But 10 days later, I was out of the hospital, and 3 months after that, I was in reasonably good shape. I had no
Wow.
lasting physical issues or mental issues. So yay, I'm on
Yes.
that.
Oh, yes.
But it was interesting as a result of this. I came upon some real important concepts around networking, believe it or not. And the first really big one was that we are all surrounded by people who truly want us to to um, be well and to succeed in life. We had some dear friends, our friends Tim and Kim, who on that specific day they were actually supposed to go on vacation. And when my wife called them, they immediately canceled. They were sitting by my bedside and they were helping my wife with the kids. But the important thing here is that we have to nurture those relationships before we need them.
Mhm.
We can't wait. If I was looking for dear friends, the wrong time is when I'm on an ventilator in the hospital bed. We had known these two for 15 years, and we'd helped each other. We've gone on vacation together. All these things. So it's those really powerful relationships that you can call on in times of need. Now, it doesn't even have to be as serious as a stroke. I mean, if you're discovering that your company is going through a downsizing, well, maybe you don't want to be calling out to your friend or calling out to people when suddenly you need a job. You want people who know you, who can be there for you when that job is gone. So yeah, nurturing it ahead of time, it became really apparent to me, and it was wonderful that so many people did reach out to me. I mean, we had people asking how they could help, which
Wow.
actually led to the second thing, which was know what you need.
Mhm.
When people are asking to help you, you need to know what you need. My wife actually sat down and she made a list of everything she could think of, everything from Lunchables for the kids' school lunches to someone to pick the kids up to a washer and dryer. I mean,
Uh-huh.
and the whole idea is if you know what you need, then when your friends reach
Yes.
out to you, you can ask for help.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people, when they're networking, this is a big mistake they make, is that they, when you maybe even been at a networking coffee or whatever, and you ask the other person, well, okay, so how can I help you? And their
Right.
response is, I don't know.
Mm.
Well, okay, I get to feel good for offering, but there's nothing that comes of that. So know what you need. If you need more clients, what do those look like? How can they help you? How can they help connect you? If you need a new accountant, well, okay, that's something you can reveal. It requires that we be a little vulnerable.
Mhm.
We need to be willing to say, I need help.
Definitely.
Very loosely connected. This
Mhm.
kind of makes me think about something I read the other day. It's so powerful. It says, instead of telling people how you feel about them at their eulogy, we should do that at their
Yes.
birthday parties.
Absolutely. That is a good point.
I love it.
I do
Yeah.
too. I saw the same thing. And you know what? It makes me think too, just the importance of relationships and
Mhm.
people. And that awakening is so great, Greg, especially because post COVID, everything's on your phone, right? And you think about people who work remotely and they don't see people. How does somebody navigate that where so much is digital, so much is remote, so much by intention is isolated? What's your advice for people to keep those strong relationships so they do have people they can count on when they need them, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
It's funny when I during COVID, I actually had to come up with a whole new talk. It was called
Yes.
"Staying Connected in a World of Isolation."
Mhm.
Well, I think the trick here is to recognize that whatever means of communication you are using, there is a person on the other side of it,
Mhm.
and to treat every opportunity to communicate as a means to connect. Um, and it might be something as simple as at the beginning of the email, just say, "Hey, how are you doing? We haven't talked in a while."
Mhm.
Yes.
Ask them what's going on in their lives. Be curious. Like, it's really no different than what you do when you're face to face. You just have to remember that just because you can't see their face doesn't mean that they aren't there.
Mhm.
Right.
And to be interested in what sure the challenges they're facing, because let's face it, we are all facing challenges all the time. Anyone who tells you differently is lying.
That is
So, any way you can find ways to help to become of service to that other person that provides a connection. I mean, one of my best buddies, he and I mean, we kind of were friends. We were definitely friends because we were both went to the karate school together. And then COVID hit and we weren't going to the karate school anymore. Well, we started texting each other. We were texting our worries and our concerns and how can I support you? We ended up having this deepening of our friendship through text messages.
Huh.
So
And you
really,
bring up a good
the,
point because I'm wondering too, how do people make that connection? And you hit the nail on the head. It takes a little bit of effort, right? Outside of your normal
it
space. Hmm.
it does, especially during COVID when we were trying to do these virtual meetings,
Right.
or virtual networking events. One of the challenges with that is that for the most part, it was just watching TV for most people.
Mhm.
Mhm.
The organizers really, the best ones, understood fairly early on you needed to provide a mechanism so that people could communicate with each other through the event.
Yes.
So I know my mom was huge on using the chat box.
Mhm.
So she would, do private chats to people just to say, "Hey, oh, I see you there," and sometimes isn't that what we need?
Mhm.
Yes.
I see you, right?
Right.
Um, and I actually made a few connections myself. Because
Good.
I attended events where they would make breakout rooms where you could go in with 3 or 4 other people and have conversations.
Right.
Now, one of the things I learned about doing that is it helps if you can take the lead because everyone's uncomfortable.
Mhm.
So, hey, I would, if we didn't have a question to talk about, I'd say, hey, let's just go around. What's everybody's favorite ice cream?
Mhm.
What's your favorite pizza? What's your favorite vacation destination? Make it personal. Make it human.
Yeah, people typically like to share information about themselves, right? If you can just tap into that, well,
Yes.
you've got a good
And sometimes not
conversation.
even, yeah, they like it about who they are.
Mhm.
That's why I love asking about vacation destinations. What's your dream vacation destination? Because, oh, that's when they say, oh, I want to go to Italy. Oh, and then you might even find out that you've got something in common at that point where you can talk excitedly about going off to Italy.
That sounds easy.
Absolutely. And there's a lot that people can do to come together. And it's so great because in our industry, the community service industry, a lot of people join community service groups because their end Their desired end result is they want to grow their business, right?
Mhm.
But what we've learned is if they come in with that as their main focus point, it doesn't generally work.
No.
Right? And you've seen that, I'm sure. So, what's your advice to somebody who wants to maybe go to a networking event and meet people, and their desired end result is to grow the business, but they too need to have the patience to build the relationships and gain the trust, right?
Right. Especially with community service groups, um, you absolutely must support the mission of the group. That has to be your primary reason for being there. Any benefits you gain to your business outside that, great. I mean, you can think of it as this is a common thread that you all share. You have that's the beginnings of a great relationship. But just like any other relationship, you need to build it from that. You need to become interconnected because a lot of people, I think, they have this mistake that they want to go to these networking events and find a client.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's not where the power is. The power of your network isn't in who you know, it's not in who you meet, it's who they know and who they meet. You want them looking out for you. So the connections you make at Exchange, those become deep friendships that when you say, you know what, I'm really having a problem right now because our website, people are getting lost on it. And the person you're talking to, because you know them and they know you, they go, you know what? I was just talking to my buddy, Dan Cooney, the other day. He is an expert in user experience on websites. He can help you out with that sort of thing.
Hmm. You want to be
So,
top of mind with those people when they have a need, right?
Yeah.
or when someone they know has that need.
Yes.
That's the strength is that you can know maybe 150, 200 people close connections.
Right.
So the power is in their 150 to 250 connections. That's when it becomes thousands of people.
Yes.
So, a quick question for you.
Okay.
What happens when every participant is not equally participating? What if someone talks more than they listen?
Oh, good question.
How do you nurture that connection?
Yes.
Okay. Well, if you're at a networking event where you're all standing in standing and having appetizers or whatever,
Mhm.
I don't have a problem with someone else talking. I would rather actually it be me talking 20 to 30% and them talking 70 to 80.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I want to find out about them.
Yes.
Okay.
Most of the time, people don't follow up after a networking event.
Mm.
So I need to be the one who does that. And if for me to do that, I need to be the one who's listening.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you are meeting with them later and they are monopolizing the conversation, right there, that's sort of a red flag for me, a red light blinking that, okay, maybe they are not ready to be in a networking connection. If they aren't asking about me, if they're only talking about themselves, that's probably not a good thing to be. I mean, I have dealt with people that are what I would refer to as aggressive conversationalists.
Yes.
They talk and talk and talk and talk, and I've always considered it to be rude to interrupt. But with these particular people, that's what they're waiting for. They're waiting for you to interrupt them and jump in, and they want someone who's as vigorous in conversation as they are. But in general, and that's one of the things that kind of tips me off. If they aren't asking about me, okay, well, it was a nice coffee, but that may not be the person I need to add to my network.
That's true.
Very simple. I like that.
I mean, there are a lot of people to meet out there.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. You're right.
We have no shortage of people. That's
That
right.
is true.
Well, and I think one of the challenges people face, and I've had people ask about this, what if there's someone in a networking event I really want to talk to?
Mhm.
And I say, let's be careful. Why do you want to talk to them? If you want to talk to them because you want to sell them something, or you want to talk to them because you want to make use of them, that's not a good basis for a relationship.
True.
And if you don't particularly like someone, I mean, two perfectly wonderful people can just not connect. I mean, that's just the way it is. But if you are putting up with them because you think you have something to gain from them, that's kind of icky, right? I mean, that's manipulative.
Yes.
So don't do that.
Right. Hopefully you have a process book that tells you the do's and don'ts of networking meetings, right?
I wrote a book about it, actually.
Okay, good. We'll have the links to your books in our episode here. Lots of learning. You take something as simple as talking to people, and there's so much more around that, right? A lot of preparation, a lot of thought, and it's much more than just going to a networking event and hoping to make a connection, right? The people
Yes, you should always know why you're doing what you're doing.
right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, don't just show up because you think you're supposed to be there. Know why you're going to be there. In fact, you should have a goal. Anytime you go to a networking event, you should know what's going to get you across the finish line. Is it you're going to meet two new people? Is it you're going to introduce someone there to someone else there? I mean, whatever it is, set that goal. Know why you're there. Know what it is when you're done. Otherwise, a lot of times people walk out going, I don't know if that was useful. Well, did you know why you were there in the first place?
Right.
That is a good point.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So to make this a little useful for our members, I have to turn it inward toward exchange
Yes.
just a little bit. But a lot of our members, I find they're very good at projects. They're very good at planning. They're very good at being part of that fundraiser. Where they struggle is in recruitment. Having the confidence and the ability to not only approach someone and explain exchange, but then to follow up with the ask. To some people, that's so intimidating.
True.
Yeah. What advice would you have for those members who really want to break that ice, but they can't get past it?
Well, one of the techniques I teach is a concept called infer. In conversation, excuse me, there are, I just came up with 5 things that you can talk to other people about. Their interests, their networks, their future focus, their evolution, and their relationships. Their networks is the one that we're kind of talking about here. Ask the other person about what groups they belong to.
Okay.
And what the fourth one, their evolution, is about their mission in life. Why? How did they get from where they were to where they are, and why? So if you can talk about those 2 things, then you're talking about groups. Then you're talking about their mission, why they do what they do, and you might want to think about coming to exchange. That sounds like something that might really fit with you. Because what we do there, you can then lead into that naturally. And that's part of it, is knowing why people should be a part of exchange in the first place.
Yes.
Right. It's not just about getting another person in a seat. We need the right people.
That is true.
And what do they have to gain from it? There has to be some give and take. People shouldn't be. I think chambers of commerce are marvelous institutions. Not everybody should be a part of it, though.
Right.
If you work, if who you're looking for are people who are in international import-export, then probably the local chamber isn't the right place for you.
Right.
So, if you are trying to bring people into exchange, first of all, why should they be a part of it? What do they have to gain? And are they the kind of person that would benefit from it? And that can be part of a conversation, a natural conversation where you're asking about, hey, so what other groups do you belong to?
So it sounds like the best preparation is a little bit of self-reflection to figure out why you're doing this event, this networking, this conversation, this meeting, and then navigating to that section where you want to attract someone else.
And one of the things, again, as we talked about before, it's not the people you meet, it's the people they know.
Yes.
So you might be meeting with, Christy, if I'm meeting with you for the first time, and what I'm thinking in my head is I really need to have more volunteers. So what I would first do is say, Christy, so what can I do to help you?
Oh, you want me to answer that?
Whoa. Not right. No, but
where do I start?
Where shall we
begin? Put you on the spot. No, but I would ask you first, what can I do to help you?
Right.
And then after we've talked a little bit about that, and I've thought maybe some ways to help you, then it's natural for you to turn around and say, well, how can I help you?
Definitely.
Right.
Yes.
You know what? I'm so glad you asked. we are having a big fundraising event right now, and I really need to get volunteers. The types of volunteers I'm looking for is this. These are the qualities they're going to have. We're in particular looking for anyone who has any finance experience.
Mhm.
Would you know anyone who'd be willing to help us out?
I like that approach, Greg, because so many times people, when they're looking to network or they have a need, they're almost coming from a sense of desperation, forgetting that that person they're speaking with, they have needs as well. They have goals too for coming into this same space. So it's good to keep that in mind and think of the other person first.
Sure. And
Well, and I also say though, don't use it as a technique,
Hmm.
because people know when they're being techniqued.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
You know, you if you are asking how can I help you, you have to mean it. You have to be sincere, and you have to be willing to give.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Good. Well, we
Yeah.
could talk all day. There's a lot to learn here. It's there's a lot to this, right?
Yeah.
It-
How ironic that we started out
Yes.
as a networking organization and
Absolutely.
we're relying on networking to keep us going 112 years later.
Well, Greg, you're right. And speaking of, people know when they're being techniqued, it's so super cool because the National Exchange Club started 112 years ago
Uh-huh.
as a group of business people who got together to grow their businesses. And as they did that, they wanted to then help the community and help each other. But their first intent was helping each other via networking, then helping the community. That's where we are today, 112 years later. So we appreciate you joining us today. Any final thoughts for our audience?
You know what? Go out and make real connections. It's wonderful. Facebook, all those social media things, they're wonderful tools, but
Yes.
they cannot replace true friendships and connections. That's where our lives are. That's where our happiness is.
Indeed.
What an appropriate way to end. Greg Peters, the Reluctant Networker, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Greg. Have a great afternoon.
You too.